Okay, recording started.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 9 Governing Board meeting after a month off. We've got a pretty full agenda to review with you, and thanks to all of you for attending. We were concerned about ensuring we would have quorum, and it looks pretty evident that we do have it, so that's great news. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thanks, Shannon. Second from someone?
Second.
I will
second.
Okay. We got, I think, Carl and Zapata both seconding it. All in favor of approving the agenda, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Minutes were distributed a few days ago, July 8 meeting, which was 2 months ago. And those minutes have been posted for a few days. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Looking for a second, someone?
Paul.
We got one from Paul. Okay, thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes from the July 8th meeting, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
Are there any
Okay.
abstentions? Anyone who wasn't here?
I have to abstain.
Okay, thank
Thanks
you, Drew.
Yeah, thanks for keeping me honest there, Ellie. And no opposed, I assume. Okay, thank you. Public comments. I'll open the floor to any public comments from anyone. Okay, excellent. Thanks, everyone. I've got it just to kind of give you a heads up on what we're going to be doing, or part of what we're going to be doing in today's meeting. The reason that we were wanting to make sure that we would have a quorum for today is that we are working towards ensuring that our tentative award of BEAD funds isn't clawed back because we failed to do something. And so we've got several critical path tasks that we have to undertake in coming months to ensure that the funds that we're tentatively awarded are awarded. And so there's three things that are of consequence. One is with your help, we are going to be looking for you to, well, let me give you the background on this. So in the previous year, we sought and achieved your approval for our audit for 2023. It was just a basic audit, and it took us a long time to get it right, but we were trying to make sure that we had it set up in such a way that it would be much easier for us to perform future audits. So that was 23. What we're talking about today is the 2024 audit. This is different because according to the federal government, who's doing the funding for the construction we're doing, anytime we spend $1 million or more, we have to go through what's called a single audit. And it's something that's expected by the federal government, and without it, we're going to lose our BEAD opportunity. We are expected to deliver a final approved audit approved by not only the governing board, but also by an auditor by the end of this month. So we have until the end of this month to complete the audit, and we haven't yet completed it yet, and also to get it approved by all the resources that need to approve it, and it needs to be tendered before the end of the month. So Ellie, who is leading this up, has got her work cut out for her. She is doing a great job on keeping up on it and doing whatever needs to be done to ensure that we will be able to accomplish this critical path item. And the trick is that since Ellie has not completed, or our group, it really hasn't been just Ellie, it's been our treasurer and our bookkeeper and our auditor, there's some more work that needs to be done. We're confident that we will end up with an audit that gets the approvals that's needed, but we can't get it today because it's not ready to go. So what we're asking for you today, when we get to the audit, is we're asking for you to uh, delegate approval for the audit to the executive committee, and then the five of us will be reviewing the final audit, and we will be responsible for approving it. And then at that point, we will be free to submit it to the government to ensure that that hurdle has been crossed. That's the first thing. That's the first critical path item. The second critical path item, according to my studies or the information that I've gathered, is that we need to go through permitting the NEPA Act, which is the National Environmental Policy Act. That's basically, we need to get permitting for the work that we're going to be doing in Addison County. We believe that some of that work will not need NEPA approvals, but some of it will, because anytime we're working in existing infrastructure, if we attach to an existing pole, we don't think that's going to be necessary to facilitate a permit. But if we're digging a trench to put some cable in, then we're going to need to get that permitting done. We are still gathering information on how to get that permitting done, but that's a critical path item, because if we can't get that permitting, no BEAD money. And then the final critical path item that I'm aware of is NTIA approval. So the resource that is providing the funding has to approve the package that the Vermont Community Broadband Board has put forth on who they want to award BEAD money to and how much. And so it has to, that proposal has been sent to the NTIA a few days ago, and they have 30 days to review it and either deny it or approve it. So again, this is, as much as I think we're very optimistic that we're going to have success in our BEAD effort, we won't know for sure. We won't be popping any corks for a little while yet until those items are all sorted out. So I think overall, I think our thinking in general is that just based on the current pace, we probably won't be doing construction until next year, 2025. But I think we're all feeling pretty optimistic about this whole package. So that is my chair report. BEAD and long drop. Dear Ellie, do you want to take this on to begin with, please?
Sure. Well, I'll start with BEAD because it's first and because you've just been talking about it, Steve. So I think you buried the lead a little bit there, a bit. I did email everyone, but just to make sure that everyone, if you didn't get the memo or missed your email or your email bounced or something like that, the news is that on August 28th, we received word that the Vermont Community Broadband Board had selected Maple Broadband as the provisional BEAD winner for our project area. So that was they under the BEAD requirements, they had to publish their final proposal for a comment period of 7 days. And then following that, they submitted to the NTIA. And so that's obviously great news because, as you guys all know, this was not a sure thing. This is a competitive application. And when the rules changed earlier this year, they made the single criterion the price. And then only if there were multiple bids than 15% of the lowest price did it go to other secondary set of criteria. So I am very happy with this provisional status, of course, but and then we'll talk about some of the other details in a bit. So Drew, you have a question or a comment? You're muted.
Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button.
There you go. You're just trying to clap?
I was.
Okay, there we go. We'll take the applause. So just to remind everyone, this is a joint application between ourselves and Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom. So we're the bidder, we are the awardee, we are tax free. That's has some advantages that come along with it. So a portion of the build is going to be in our service territory, and a portion of the build is going to be in their service territory. So this is also, but I mean, the other sort of editorial comment here is that, as Steve said, we need, in order to get the final grants papered, there are a couple of hurdles that we still have to get through. The main one, of course, being the NTIA, the federal government agency responsible for the administration of the BEAD award, has to approve Vermont's final proposal, and they have to approve us as an award winner. From what I understand, from what I've seen in the national press, they are really quite interested in making sure that the cost per passing, which is the cost per address passed under BEAD, is reasonable, because there's a lot of discretion given to the Assistant Secretary of Commerce, and so they have been making noises that they will exercise their discretion to prevent the wasteful abuse of government funds with excessively high cost proposals. From what I understand, our cost per passing should hopefully be well within what they consider to be acceptable, but we don't know anything until they've signed off on it. And the other thing as well is they're not signing off on project area by project area. They're signing off on Vermont's proposal as a whole. And so if they have a concern with any part of Vermont's proposal, that could hold up the timing. So according to the policy notice, they have 90 days to respond. That does not mean 90 days to approve. They could take 89 days to get back to Vermont and say you need to make changes. So we honestly don't know if or when that approval will come. So as Steve said, we're definitely not popping any corks. And we'll talk about the audit in a little bit, but we did receive a draft audit. I distributed that to you guys. There's a couple of minor, well, we need to obviously go through it with a fine-toothed comb, both, myself and the bookkeeper and the finance committee and the executive committee, all of us, just to make sure we're happy with all the details. But we have a draft. I'm not worried about getting it finalized by the end of the month and getting it submitted as it needs to be. And then the other thing is the NEPA. So Steve mentioned the NEPA, which is that's the environmental permitting. In my mind, I mean, Steve's absolutely right. That's a critical path to getting going. Some of the nuances of this are unknown. We have previously heard that we weren't able to start anything until we received permitting for everything, which is a totally nonsensical rule, which the state of Vermont recognizes this, and hopefully that's not the way things wind up going, and I don't think they will, quite frankly. I don't think that would be very good national politics. So I think that the NTIA will see reason here. But the other thing is once the grant is papered, once it's been awarded to us, this is something that we have to do. And so, yes, it's true, if we fail to do it, the grant could be clawed back and we'd lose it. But it's not the sort of thing that we need to get in place before we get the grant. And the grant has a 4-year performance period. We did say in our application that we committed to be done within 3 years of when we received final go-ahead. So hopefully it doesn't take longer than a year to get the NEPA permitting. I really hope it doesn't take longer than a year to get the NEPA permitting. Zapata's smiling over there. Zapata has some idea. So, but yes, I mean, as Steve said, this is probably one of the other unknowns, because even the Vermont Community Broadband Board, which is administering the BEAD program, even they don't understand all of the details about how this is going to happen. So that's, we will work through that, but I'm not terribly concerned. I mean, I feel like this is work and we need to figure out the details and we need to get it done, but it's not the sort of thing where it's going to keep me up at night like, oh dear, this is an existential risk. Okay, so Drew, did you have something? Because your hand is still up. If not, then Rich, looks like you don't have anything to say. So I'm going to turn it over to Rich, who did put his hand up.
Question about NEPA. Is NEPA a federal agency, and are they looking for NEPA permits or state and local permits and checking on them? And the
NEPA,
next question,
sorry, go ahead.
The next question is, when you said that everybody who has BEAD, been selected for BEAD, has to perform, has to do all their things to be ready. Like if there's any one thing wrong with the state of Vermont, everybody loses out. And so that question is Starlink, if I understand Starlink has about $1 million, whatever the SpaceX thingy is. And if they just kind of drag their feet, we're out of it.
Okay, let me answer the second question first. So it's not up to any provisional awardee to be dragging their feet or anything, although in theory someone could sue somewhere, which might hold things up, but let's not worry about what we can't control. But what I mean is that if, for example, let's pick on Consolidated, because I don't think there's any problem with Consolidated. But should the NTIA have some problem with the award of one or more project areas to Consolidated, or maybe one of them has a really high cost per passing, one of the project areas, they may say, nope, that doesn't work, VCB. You need to go back and negotiate with Consolidated or find someone else who can get a more reasonable cost per passing for this project area. And that means that all the other awardees in the state of Vermont have to wait until that issue has been resolved. So hopefully that clarifies. But it's not that an awardee would be able to throw things, throw a spoke in the wheel. But it's that if the NTIA has a problem with any of the awardees for any of the project areas, they can kick it back to Vermont to correct that problem. And until they have accepted the proposal for the entirety of the state, no one's getting any paperwork. Is that part clear? Okay. So Nipa and Zapata, you can please feel free to jump in here, because it happens we have someone on the governing board who right now she's probably forgotten more than I know about Nipa, but I'm gonna be getting quite a crash course in the next couple of months. So Nipa, and then there's also I think it's SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation something. I'm bad with these acronyms, but basically there are a series of federal regulations and requirements and guidelines. So it's federal permitting that we have to go through, and then there's of course also all of the state and local permitting. And previously with the ARPA grants, those were exempt for some reason that escapes me from the federal permitting. So all we had to do is comply with the state and local permitting, and so now we have another layer. So we always have to get a permit from the town, we're required. We always have to get permits from the state, we're required. And we now have to get additional permits from the federal, and I'm not even sure if you get them directly from the federal agencies or if there's some sort of a flow through to the states. But basically, it's yet another set of permitting regulations and requirements that we have to understand and comply with. And I think that the biggest thing isn't necessarily understanding those requirements, it's understanding how those requirements relate to the ability to get going on anything. Because, for example, where there's existing utility poles, which is most of our build, I mean, up to this point, that's been 98% of our build has been adding fiber to existing utility pole lines. That should be something which is called categorical exclusion from NEPA permitting, because those are existing utility poles. They're already in the ground. We're not really disturbing anything. We're just going along with bucket trucks and adding things up in the air. Having said that, someone needs to actually go through and confirm, this route is an aerial route and it is categorically excluded and you may proceed. And it's that process that we don't understand. And then for the things where we are, for example, putting in buried infrastructure, then those are where we need to get new permitting. And we need to understand what those requirements are. We need to make sure that we fill in the appropriate paperwork and get the permit. Does that make sense to everyone?
Does NEPA need to sign off that all state and local permits are in place too, or are they just looking at their own?
I believe they're just looking at their own. Is that Zapata's nodding? Okay. Yeah, that's been my experience of how it works, is that, the towns give you their permit, but they don't care if you're good with the state, and the state gives you their permits, and they don't care if you're good with the town. So it's your responsibility as the entity building infrastructure to make sure that you have ticked all the boxes all the way along. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Okay, so that's all that I have on BEAD. Does anyone else have any other questions?
There'll be a lot more to report to you over the coming months because there's a lot in play right now.
Yep, there's a lot in play right now. Okay, so the next thing is the long drop program. And so we've been talking about this for many months now, but it took until about the middle of August, I think, until the VCBB published the request for applications for what they're calling the Affordable Long Drop Program. And that deadline was Friday. It's now been extended to, I think, next week, Sunday, but I still want to get the application in this week just to get it off my plate, because there's lots of other things on my plate and I want to get this one off. But essentially what this is it's a pot of a minimum of 6.1 million up to a potential of 8.1 million that the board authorized staff to extend the pot if necessary based on demand. And this is to pay for drops for to connect households with 3 priority categories. One is manufactured home communities, which doesn't apply to us because we don't have any that we pass right now because they were all considered to be served under the terms of our construction grant. The other 2 categories do apply to us. So one is lower income Vermonters, and we are allowed to designate what we consider to be lower income. And the third category is what they've called pre-signups. So people who have expressed an interest in our service and have not gone forward to have an installation and take up service because of the cost. So we have, last time I looked, which was about a week and a half ago, we had 151 orders sitting in our crowd fiber where people had been scouted and told that they needed conduit to go into the ground and had not progressed any further. And this is not terribly surprising because at a cost of approximately $15 a foot to put in conduit, this is an issue for. I mean, not everyone has a couple $1,000s sitting around. Whether you're lower income or even middle income. So this is a really great program, and one of the things that I've spoken to the executive committee about is that one of the strategic reasons that the VCBB decided to launch this particular program is that in the BEAD program, the drops to the consumers' homes are paid for, inclusive of conduit. And whereas for the ARPA-funded grants, which is what we've had up to this point, the funding is to build main line along the road, and then, our policy, which I think is the correct policy, is that we're not going to pay for buried infrastructure on private property, especially if someone can have an aerial connection, but really under no circumstances, because we need to get to universal service. And it doesn't make sense to spend $10,000 putting a conduit under someone's lawn when we could be spending $10,000 putting fiber along the road to get to people who don't have service. So, but the VCB recognized that this is creating disparity between households that would be served, for example, from the BEAD program, or if there's other federal programs like that don't apply to us but apply in other parts of the state where the drops are paid for, and the ARPA program that we've had up to this point where the drops are not paid for. So that's just so that you guys understand, that's part of the rationale here, is to create some parity between those two. So I've been working with the executive committee for a couple of weeks on essentially laying out the policy guidelines for how we want to be handling this, because the VCBB really took advice from CUDs not to be overly prescriptive with this grant program, but what they did is they left a lot open to interpretation. So that's it's not a bad thing, and I think we're sitting in a good place. And so the work I have to do now is really to submit the application and to do the analysis to figure out, not only to say how many people are in the pipeline now, but how we're going to be, what are our policy choices in relation to this, how we're going to be protecting to make sure that we're not funding drops to $5 million homes and things along those lines. And as well, this program is meant not only to fund people that are in our pipeline now, but also people that may sign up for service over the next year or so. So the source of these funds is also ARPA, which means that these drops need to be installed by the end of September of next year. So there is a limited time window, especially given that the ground is frozen for some of those months. So there's quite a lot of work to do, not so much to apply for the grant, but just to make sure that we have the appropriate back-end systems to do the eligibility verifications and to be able to actually get some of these drops in the ground. I suppose the good news, part of the good news here is that it's kind of forcing us ahead of BEAD to address some of the problems that we would otherwise be having to figure out for the first time with BEAD, because it's the first time that we've ever had to be really in a big way getting involved in construction on private property. So the first step now is to get the application in. So as I said, I've been working with the executive committee on the policy in relation to that. And so I plan to submit the application this week, which is really just outlining what we've talked about already in executive committee, plus my financial modeling of how much money we're asking for. And then from there, the VCBB is going to take this up in their October meeting. So we should know at the October meeting if we're successful, which I imagine we will be, but more to the point, what is the amount of the award? Because if we ask, we may not get all that we ask for because it is a statewide competitive grant. And if the total ask is more than the 8.1 million, we may not get everything that we've asked for. Drew.
Yeah, if you're looking for partners for dealing with low income or income verification, CVOEO would be an awesome partner for that. My mom has worked for Head Start for like 30 years, but they're really great in helping to get that kind of information out there and helping people to process the application, and everything to do is income verified. So that could be awesome to if you need help with that stuff.
We are 100% Drew. Way ahead of you there. I've been meeting with them for some weeks now, and as of about 2 weeks ago, they agreed to do these verifications on our behalf, and so the ball is back in our court to essentially figure out the back end systems and help them help us do that. And just so you guys are aware, our friends at NEK-CV, which is the CUD, which is the merger of NEK Broadband and CV Fiber, they have been doing this. They've been doing income verifications for, I don't know for how long, but for quite a while now, because they also have a subsidy program. And so I'm going to be reaching out to them so that we can copy paste from what they've been doing with their local community action agency, so that, again, we're not reinventing the wheel, which is it's great about there being multiple CUDs, is that when some of us are ahead in some things, we can help the others. So I'm pretty excited about this. Anything else? Any other questions on the affordable long drop program?
So that's another item that's in the works, and you'll continue to see updates as the days and months progress. So pretty exciting.
I think maybe just to give a little bit of a forward look, our next governing board meeting happens before the VCBB, I think. Is it before or is it the day after? Let's look, actually. Actually, it's the day after. So we will know by the time of our next governing board meeting the results of the VCBB's adjudication. So we'll be able to tell you if we're successful, which again, I imagine we will be, but what's the amount of the award? And then from there, obviously working in anticipation of receiving an award, perhaps not as much as we've asked for, but, an award of some amount, and working on the back end system so that we can get communications out to the public. I'm setting expectations of November, and hopefully we can get it out by the end of October. But knowing the amount of the award sorry, I'm speaking too quickly. Knowing the amount of our award may help us refine the exact policies that we apply. And so that's why we don't want to have any public communications or setting expectations or opening it up for applications until we know that and we can appropriately set expectations. So hopefully by the end of October, just so you guys are aware. Drew, did you have something now? You've put up your hand.
I am not putting up my hand, so I don't know why it keeps going up. I have touched nothing. Here, let me just press it again. Did it go down?
There you go. Yeah, it went down.
All right. So you won't know the low income number until October.
What do you mean by the low income number?
You said the amount of money you said it'll be up to Maple Broadband's discretion what qualifies as low income?
Yes, that's up to our discretion. So we have a stake in the ground, and I'm going to submit into the application our stake in the ground, but leave the door open for us to modify that based on the amount of the award, because if we get significantly less than what we ask for, we reserve the right to change that eligibility. And the program is meant to serve everyone with a emphasis on lower income. And so it actually behooves us to have a pretty generous definition of lower income in order to make sure that we're helping people of low income, but also moderate income. And then the people of higher income, we still have the ability to provide payments, but maybe not the full payment. And I guess the other thing I should say is that the VCBB, the board resolution, and this is one of the requirements of the program, it makes us put in a minimum service commitment. So if someone is receiving a drop that's funded under this program, we are not only encouraged, but required to make them commit to a minimum amount of service. So that's another policy point. Okay, that's all I have on that one.
Okay, everyone, let's move on. Executive committee composition. We're coming up to a vote item here. I want to just check with Adam. Can you weigh in and just confirm what Ellie believes is the case, that we do have quorum?
You're muted, Adam.
There we go.
Yes, you do. You do have quorum.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
You've got 18 seats. You've got 10 delegates.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Good
this
deal.
is Mike Sheets. I'm on the call as well.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Steve, who is
So-
that?
Mike Sheets.
Mike Sheets. Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't
thank
have
you.
one, so we've got more. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
So to tell you what you probably already know is that our CUD is made up of kind of two levels of governance. One is the governing board, and the governing board ultimately is the body that really will approve pretty much everything that we do in one form or fashion. But because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and meeting more frequently would be cumbersome and may not even work with people have other engagements, there is a group called the Executive Committee. And the Executive Committee is composed of 5 people that help help the organization make decisions that can be made more regularly. And that group, the executive committee, can approve spending to a certain level. And beyond that certain level, it ends up bumping up to the governing board. But there is a lot of work that happens in the executive committee. It's all available to our governing board with minutes and recordings, so you can attend or watch any of those anytime you want. And so it's very important to timely implementation of a lot of work that comes at us frequently. So we just lost one of our executive committee members, Jeff Glassberg. Jeff, you may know some of him. Jeff is, we were grateful to have him work for us because he has a great deal of depth in terms of financial knowledge, and that's something that we want to make sure that we give lots of attention to. And so we were grateful to have him in here. He got, I don't want to paint him, I don't want to judge him. He has, before he joined Maple Broadband's executive committee, he was very, very busy. And he's still very, very busy. And it became a problem for him that he could not really give us the time that he needed, while he also gave his other commitments done. So he stepped down off the executive committee. And so Ellie and I set out to look for a replacement. And I think both of us collectively thought that Zapata Courage would be an excellent addition. And I think those of you who have been attending these governing board meetings know that Zapata is not shy about speaking her mind, and that's exactly the kind of person we much value. So we are going to be putting forth to you, asking for your approval to appoint Zapata as our new executive committee member. Zapata, would you care to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. So in my career capacity, I work for the state of Vermont within the wetlands program, which is primarily regulatory in nature, which is why Ellie mentioned about NEPA. I'm pretty familiar with the permitting process, the regulatory process, and the collaboration with federal entities such as Army Corps of Engineers and NEPA and SHPO, et cetera. So hopefully that's some of the experience I can bring to the executive committee. In addition, I serve on the Ripton Conservation Commission, as well as having been serving on the governing board now for 2 years. And lastly, I'm the president of a nonprofit organization because I haven't learned how to say no. That is coming. That's going to be my birthday present to myself is learning how to say no. But in the meantime, I do serve in that capacity. And so, from a marketing standpoint and connecting and networking is also another area in which I feel like I can provide some guidance or feedback or be able to ask intelligent questions. And I'll leave the finances more towards Ellie and the financial committee and our treasurer. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Zapata. Drew, your hand's up. I don't know if that's a
Did you want me to make a motion? Yeah, did you want me to make a motion?
Sure.
Okay, I move to add Zapata Courage to the executive committee.
Second.
Great, thank you. All right, and we have a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you for giving me permission to attend more meetings.
Thank you
Better
for
you
not
than
being able
me.
to say no, Zapata.
Excuse me, Steve, can we just record the vote, the numerical results of the vote for the minutes, please?
We should be able to do that, I believe. Shouldn't we? I think so. We can do a roll call, Paul, if you're concerned about that. Right now.
Yeah, roll call's fine. I just thought a numerical result like X, yes, Y, no.
Yeah, I think
Z,
we try to do this at a high level just to keep the meeting going. So generally, we ask for approvals, disapprovals, and abstentions. That gives us the correct count, and that's worked pretty well for us. If you think in particular that this needs a little bit more scrutiny, I think we're fine with that. Rich, do you have your hand up there?
Yeah, I make a motion that we put it in the minutes that the vote was unanimous.
Well, let me ask the other two questions then. Has anybody disapproved appointing Zapata to the executive committee? Is there any abstentions? Well, in that case, Rich, I believe we can do that. Is that okay with you, Paul, if we just say it's unanimous?
Okay,
Great, thank you. Okay, great. So welcome, Zapata. For better or for worse. All right, great. Let's just move right along into financial. How do we
Okay,
want to
that's
do
me.
this? Our
Well,
treasurer, Lynn, is taking a much needed vacation and she is not on this call. So I believe, Ellie, this falls to you.
yeah, I usually do this. It's fine. I'm happy. Okay, so you guys have all seen this before, I think. So this is where we're sitting now in terms of the cash situation with all of our active grants. We have still almost 1.1 million in pre-construction, almost 800,000 in construction, and then another 730,000 or so between town ARPA and ARPA match. So we are. I know there's still quite a bit of time until the end of next year. Sue, your hand was up and then down. Did you have a question? Okay, I'm going to continue. I know that there's quite a bit of time between now and the end of next year, but just noting that with construction, it takes a while. Okay, she was voting. It takes a while to go from deciding that you're going to spend money to actually getting the money spent. And just to remind everyone that all of these grants, pre-construction, construction, town ARPA, and ARPA, these are all ARPA funded, and that money has to be spent by the end of next year. Now, there's actually quite a lot of money we haven't spent here, and we specifically did not spend it because we were waiting to understand what the results of the BEAD application were. And granted that we still don't know, but we have a lot better idea now than we did before. Because before we were the provisional winner, we might have spent this money differently than we now plan to spend it. So some of it we plan to spend this year, as previously communicated, to finish out the obligations of our construction grants to enable us to draw down the balance of, not all of this will, well, it'll all come the next year or so, but some of that is retainages, which comes 6 months after you finished your obligations. But most of that will get. And the once we get the affordable long drop in and the audit and all of those things, and as well, just a reminder, I don't think it's on the agenda, but starting next month, we will have on the agenda reviewing the draft 2026 budget, as well as the draft annual report for this year and our pro forma, which is our projected end of this year financials. We need to distribute that by statute. We need to distribute those to our member towns by the end of next month. So that's going to be a big financial updates for next month's governing board. But long story short, as part of that budgeting process, I'm going to need to apply my mind to recommendations of, now that we're pretty sure we're going to get BEAD, where do we spend this money? And just while I'm on the subject, the other caveat here is that it's really extremely difficult to budget for next year without having much of an understanding of how long it might take to get BEAD approval and when we might be able to start spending that money, not knowing what the permitting requirements might be and how long that might take. So this is just like a heck of a caveat that in particular our capital budget for next year, we'll do the best that we can, but we may even have a better idea because October is the draft and then we have a public hearing in November and then December we finalize. So we may see changes from October to December depending on what happens with BEAD if we get more certainty, or if not, just kind of teeing this up that next year we may want to have a formal revision to the budgets when we have more clarity around what our capital budget actually can look like. So, any questions on where we're standing now in terms of grant money? Okay, great. So the second thing here, this is the operations dashboard. So this is showing where we are. So so Paul had written me and Steve an email asking some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and just proactively explained to everyone. I explained to Paul in email. So this first column here, this is basically, so column C is the actual and column B is the projection. And according to our financial policies and procedures, I need to update the financial model twice annually, once before the annual meeting in May, and once right about now as part of the budgeting process. As it happened, this year I revised it a third time, which was in July as part of the second BEAD application. And so, having literally just looked at the financial model, I had something more updated than April, which was the last time I did it. So I went ahead and updated to show the projections in the July business plan versus the April business plan. And that's just to orient you as to the origin of these numbers, the budget to actual. And the one thing that I do want to call everyone's attention to on here, which is really great news, is that our new installations has been sitting at sub 10 for the past couple of months, and in August it's jumped up to nearly 20, which is good news. I mean, I'd like to see it to be higher, but even still, I think that's really good. And our phone service went from it was significantly higher than planned. It went up from 106 to 111. Other than that, there's not too much here that I really think is unchanged from last month. Paul.
Yeah, Ellie, thank you for the explanation. Just a follow-on question. Is that business plan that you referred to, the July 2025, is that a document that we have access to, or is that just something that is a spreadsheet under your control?
It's more of an internal working document. I review it in detail with the finance committee. I would be happy to share it with anyone upon request, but it is a confidential document, so we don't put it up on our website. And I mean, if you're interested, I'll happily share it with you, but most people are probably not that interested.
Yeah, please do. When you got a chance, it's not urgent. Thanks.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do. And by the way, our finance committee meetings are also public meetings. So if anyone on the governing board is interested in attending the finance committee meetings as an interested member of the public, you can go right ahead. We have one on Friday afternoon. The exception being executive committee members, because if we have too many of you guys join, we get quorum and it becomes an executive committee meeting, which we don't want. Okay. Anything else on the operations dashboard here?
If any of you do want to attend that finance committee, just reach out to Ellie and ask her, and she'll drop you on the list.
Yep, and it's also the agenda with contact with joining details is also up on our website, as it should be. And then the final thing is we didn't meet in August, but if you guys recall, we update the budget to actual at the end of each quarter, and so this dashboard did have the budget to actual update through the end of the second half, which is the first half, which is the second quarter. Not sure if anyone has looked at this or if you want me to go through it from top to bottom. I think basically as of now, we are largely within budget. There are a couple of things that are going to be over budget. One of them is, just off the top of my head, is our auditing expense, because we didn't get billed from our auditor for last year until this year. And then also last year's audit was more extensive than anticipated, and so we had to pay more than we had originally expected for that one. So those actually got paid in the third quarter, so you'll see that being over budget. And then the executive committee did approve an increase in the total overall annual marketing budget, but as of now, between marketing and advertising and promotion, we're actually through the first half, we were still under budget for the year, being under halfway through, but I think overall those are going to wind up over budget. Other than that, I don't really have too much else to say. Obviously, we're not actually going to be obtaining debt this year, but if anyone happened to have a look at this, otherwise it's in your board packs. You can look at it, and if you come with questions next month or reach out to me offline, I'll happily answer anything. But I don't want to bore you guys with going through this thing from top to bottom. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now.
Okay, So as I said, here's where we are going to be looking for your help. I don't know, do you want to tee this up, Ellie?
Yeah, this is the audit. So basically, I think Steve covered this in the chair report. So one of the requirements of the BEAD program is that we need to have filed our audit for the previous financial year, which is the year ending December 31st, 2024, with a federal clearinghouse by the end of this month. That is the federal filing deadline, and we have been a federal award recipient. This is a federal single audit, as was last year's. Last year's was late, which is okay, but under the terms of the BEAD program, it's sort of like a slap on the wrist if you're late. But under the terms of the BEAD program, this is one of the things that we said that we would do, and we understand that our provisional award, will be at risk if we don't file this. So this year it's actually serious. We have to do it. So you did see that in the pack that I sent out to you, we have a draft audit, and as I said, Darlene and I are going through this with a fine-tooth comb. We have a couple of minor things that we've identified so far, nothing major, and the finance committee is going to be reviewing on Friday. So my expectation of the process from here is that Darlene and I will prepare our list of suggested edits to the audit. I will review with the finance committee on Friday. We will compile a final set of changes, submit those to the auditor, make sure that she agrees, get revised audits, and then pass that to the executive committee for review and hopefully approval at the next executive committee meeting, which is Monday, September 22nd. That will give us plenty of time for us to approve and sign off, and then to file with the federal clearinghouse, because that does take a couple of days. Our auditor needs to file some things. We need to file as well. So we don't want to be leaving this until the very end of the month. Drew.
Yes, I am happy to make a motion if that's what you're ready for.
Yes, sir.
All right. I move to delegate approval of the 2024 audit to the executive committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. We got a second from Rich Warren. I think we got one from Carl too. Discussion. Okay. All right, we're going to vote here. All in favor for delegating the approval of this year's audit or last year's audit? Raise your hand or say aye.
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 Okay. Any disapprovals? Any abstentions? It is again unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's move on. We've got a fair amount of ground yet to cover, so let's just keep on plugging away here. Personnel matters. This one's to me. We brought Ellie on as our executive director in October, I believe, late September, October. And in the early year or two, when we were performing, we've been doing regular performance reviews. The first year we did it twice. We did it 6 months in, and then we did it another at the 12-month period. And we were doing those performance reviews around the anniversary of her hire, and that caused some avoidable challenges for Ellie and our treasurer and our bookkeeper, because the budget has to take into account the salary that we pay our executive director. So at Ellie's request, we kind of did a little shift where the executive committee performs a performance review in August, and then any salary adjustments would happen at the end of the year. But by doing that, we give this financial piece of it sufficient time to make sure it gets percolated through the documents and the budget and whatnot, to make sure everything is done properly. So it's worked pretty well for us, and so we did it again this year, and we completed it in August. The executive committee met a few times. We wrote up a document, some comments about what we thought about Ellie's performance and any concerns we might have. We also asked for Ellie to respond, which she did. She provided a written response, and I think really what she did is she distilled down the most important parts of what we're doing and what she needed to focus on. And to be real blunt about it. One is that we need to complete our ARPA obligation to provide universal service, which means every address in our CUD has to have access to broadband service. They don't have to have access to Maple broadband. They just have to have access to broadband service. And so that has been Ellie's prime focus. She's also worked on more. The one was that is related to the long drop program, that people are in need to work on that to ensure that the program, some kind of program is in place to address that. And then I think the other one was mostly about sustainability, to make sure that we remain functional over the years. So we did have a meeting with Ellie, and in one of our executive committee meetings, I think we had that in executive session. We had a conversation. I think maybe you might well have, the governing board may well have the same opinion of Ellie that our executive committee does, which is that we are really grateful that we have her. She's really doing a great job, and really it's very difficult to find any fault with anything she's doing. So we basically said as much, and so her benefit program takes care of all of her insurances. The good news was that we took into account the fact that it sounds like Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is what she receives, is in trouble. And we recently learned just about a week ago that the rate increase that we're going to be accommodating. So again, we don't want to make Ellie pay for health insurance that she didn't have to pay for before. So we're going to increase her health insurance by 9.6%, which is what Blue Cross Blue Shield said the increase was going to be. So basically, we gave her kind of a level across all those other benefits, and are also awarding her a 4% salary increase. Do you have any? That's pretty much what I want you to be aware of. I also am opening the floor if you have any questions about what we've done and how we've done it, or anything else related to our executive director's performance. This is your opportunity.
So that already happened, and that doesn't need a motion, right?
It does not. It was that executive director or the executive committee made that decision and handled those details. And I imagine if we looked at our financial rules and regulations that we publish for ourselves, it fell within the threshold that the executive committee could provide without going to the governing board.
They're not allowed to fire me without your permission, though. Just putting that out there.
Well, we'll make a note of that, Ellie. Thank you. All right, so I think we're clear there. So let's keep on plugging away here. This is the more fun stuff here on item 9.
Steve, just real quick, I wanted to say it's awesome having Ellie, and so I second everything y'all said and decided. So yeah, thank you for all you do, Ellie.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. It's a great job.
We are very, very lucky. I am very subjective on this, but and there's other really sharp people that work in the CUDs across the state, and we got the best. And we're real lucky in a sense, because what happens is that because she's so sharp, and she can also wear at least one other hat, which is that she's also the chair of Vermont CUD Association. So whenever the folks at VCBB have questions about CUDs and want to have kind of a one-on-one, they bring Ellie in. So Ellie not only represents our firm, our organization really well, she also represents all the CUDs, and she also chairs all the meetings, all the the monthly meetings that Vacuda holds. She's the chair of those as well. So she's a wonder. Okay, enough of that. I'm going to do one or two bits of construction update, and I'm sure Ellie's got some stuff she can add. So the one thing that kind of came up a little bit is that we now think that the path is more likely paved for us to end up with BEAD money, and we're not sure it'll happen, but we want to kind of prepare for the arrival of BEAD money by doing some upfront work, some groundwork, if you will, to prepare for the work that needs to be done. And for example, from my perspective, there's a lot of work that can be done that doesn't involve spending a nickel. Like, for example, we're talking about putting together an RFP for equipment and things like that. I'm the one doing that, and I'm basically a volunteer, so it doesn't cost us a nickel to put together an RFP. So there's some of those kind of things going on. We also feel very strongly focused on getting work on the detailed design, the network detailed design, which is kind of the package that the construction company uses to build the network. And so that doesn't get done overnight. That takes a lot of work because it really is looking at every pole in our district and things like that. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. So Ellie and I, just a few days ago, began the kind of first step in engaging JSI, which is our engineering firm, and have asked them to give us a quote for the detailed design that they'll be doing for us. And I think that our hope is that right before we have our next executive committee meeting, we'll get an estimate from JSI, and we'll be able to ask for approval from the executive committee to instruct them to proceed. So we'll see how that goes, but that's the kind of thing that we think it's a pretty fair bet at this point that we'll be able to do what we need to do there. So I think personally it's money well spent, and we really do need to get ahead of things. I guess what I've said to all of you before is that when BEAD hits, it doesn't just hit Vermont, it's going to hit 50 states. And so there's hundreds of organizations across the country that are going to be wanting to do the same thing. And so I think it's only reasonable to expect that we're going to be in queue with a lot of other organizations that may well be much larger than ours. So I think what Ellie and I are going to try to do is we're going to just try to snap through all the things we can do without excessive expenditure. We also can't spend anything that relates to the environmental, the permitting. So we have we basically can't do anything like that. So the money we're going to spend.
That's actually one of the things we can spend money on. We can spend money on environmental planning and permitting, but we can't spend money on construction.
Right. So we're going to do what we can that's not prohibited, basically. So there's a lot going on there anyhow. So all right.
And just one more comment on that is you may be wondering how we're going to pay for that. And obviously we do have operational service revenues, but we also, as I showed you earlier, we have almost 1.1. We have over $1 million sitting in pre-construction, and the pre-construction funds explicitly allow things like engineering design and make ready. We've actually got make ready applications into Green Mountain Power to better understand the cost of some of the BEAD routes. We're not going to pull the trigger on that because that's construction work, but some of the other routes we're going to start to pay for the make ready surveys on those, so that's we're not going to lose a day as soon as we understand when we can get going with construction.
So I'm going to take on one other item for you, and then I'm going to hand the baton to Ellie. Some of you may well be aware of this, because this has kind of been a matter in play for quite a while. And this relates to service to Ripton. And if you can see the map there, you'll note that we're looking at East Middlebury over here, and we're looking at Breadloaf, and if you zoom in a little bit, you can see Ripton. And many of you who have worked in the past at ACRPC are aware that there's been a concern expressed for a long time about what happens if there's a flood and the Middlebury River down here gets flooded, and this road, 125, is inaccessible, and this other road down here called Old Town Road has been kind of contemplated as the emergency exit route. So there you can see Old Town Road. It's not that long, it's kind of confusing, but it's basically about 4 miles long, and it's in rough shape. ACRPC did commission Otter Creek Engineering to do a study of it, which was something that I've used as kind of a go-to resource for a long time. What's kind of consequence to us is that the pole line that runs, the utility pole line that contains all the fiber and copper and power that serves Ripton, it ends up jumping onto Old Town Road, all the way up here and all the way up here. And so the problem really is that there have been problems there. I just surveyed this portion of Old Town Road yesterday, and when there's a flood, there was a big, probably 8-foot culvert that was sitting where the road went, and this body of water passed under it. That's gone. The culvert is missing in action, and there's a chasm there that's about 50 feet across and about 25 feet deep that's just got a small trickle of water running through it. So if you want to take a walk down Old Town Road, you got to climb down an embankment across the way and climb up again. So it's not a good situation. So recognizing this issue as being kind of consequential to the area, Green Mountain Power has embarked on an effort to basically bury their power infrastructure underground. So pretty much everything from about here all the way up to here, and then from here up to about here, they're going to trench. They're going to do trenching next week, if it all goes as planned, and then bury all their infrastructure. And they've been kind enough to invite us and First Light, which is a fiber service provider, and Consolidated to participate. And so we're not going to pay for the trenching machine, but it's up to each of us to furnish the materials that we lay in the trench, and also furnish personnel to make sure that it's done properly. And so we've been participating in that. And right now, like I said, we do have a highly qualified construction company, fiber construction company, Eustis Cable Enterprises. And those of you may have heard about Eustis. They probably have the lion's share of the fiber business in the state. They're very, very large, and they come highly recommended. So we're giving them that work. We are also bringing in JSI, our local engineering firm, to perform construction oversight. I think the one thing that gave Ellie and me heartburn about this is that normally, always, when we engage parties in work we're going to have to pay for, we are very, very focused on controlling the scope, tightening the scope, make sure that nothing, trying to avoid scope creep and things like that. And we've discovered that basically Green Mountain Power is not going to help us in any way. They're not going to lift a finger. They're going to do their trenching, and all we have to do is come in there and make sure everything is done properly. So we don't have the kind of financial control that we would like to have had, but we are. But I'm confident that it's going to come in okay. I think the challenge is, those of you who have been up in that part of the world, it's not like fresh soil ready to have corn planted in it. It's lots of rocks, lots of obstacles. So we don't know how long it'll take. That's the problem with scope creep. This is a scope creep potential situation because we do not know how long it's going to take for Green Mountain Power to do the work they're doing. We have working closely with Ellie on budgeting for it, and any overruns we're prepared to address. And so that's, I think I look forward to it, because this is the only way that we could cost effectively have served Ripton. And so once this duct is in place, and all we're installing right now is plumbing pipe. It's called interduct. It's a PVC plastic tubing, and we're going to put that in. And then when the time comes, we'll be putting fiber optic cable in that and extending it up to Ripton. So it's kind of a very first important step to ensuring that we can serve our CUD member Ripton. Zapata, question.
No, not a question, just some additional information because of the other roles that I've played. I worked pretty closely with Otter Creek Engineering as they were doing all of the environmental work. And that environmental work was commissioned both by the town of Ripton with the intent of seeing whether or not the Old Town Road could be upgraded and reestablished as an actual transportation corridor for an emergency exit. There's still a lot of, I'll say, controversy around that being reestablished. However, with GMP, all of that environmental work has already been done. So that's not going to be, that will not be something that would delay their ability to move forward with the groundbreaking that might be required.
Very helpful. Thank you. Drew.
Yeah, so MCTV has viewership in Ripton. So if there's any kind of advertisement or informational thing you'd want me to put on our channel for people who do watch in Ripton, I would love to do that because Ripton is a very underserved area for those kinds of things. And I think that could be a really great distribution opportunity.
Yep. We're on board with you there, Drew. That's really the case. I think that the only challenge that that Ellie and I have been discussing is the fact that once this project is complete, we still haven't got fiber up into Ripton. And there's, like, for example, there's stretches there where poles are being replaced, and we're beholden to Green Mountain Power again. They're the ones putting the poles up, and we can't tell them when to do it. Their scope today is to bury cable in any place where, like, for example, that water body crossing that I was showing you, there's poles that are going to be placed there so that they can't practically go underground there. So they're going to set poles there, as well as down at the west end of that route. But we don't know when they'll do that. I think the only fact is that this is the only way Ripton is served. Old Town Road is it. So it's not just for Maple Broadband, it's for the whole shooting match. So I think the good news is the only trick is going to be for a lot of providers, like, for example, up at the Snow Bowl, I know First Light serves the Snow Bowl. They've got a fiber channel up there. And at some point, the existing fiber, which is on poles, is going to be decommissioned, and the fiber that's been put underground is going to have to be put into place. So there's going to be a lot of transfer of services that are going to happen when the time comes. And we're watching it closely, and it's like I said, I think the most important message is that Ripton's can be easily forgotten because they're kind of in the corner of our CUD, but rest assured, based on what we've gone through with our friends at Ripton, it's not something that you're going to see us forget anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, if you do want me to put any advertising about it, just let me know. And you're also the only nonprofit provider, and so I could only advertise you because I cannot put things that are for profit on the channel. So I think that if you do want me to put anything about it coming at any time, just let me know.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, presuming that all goes well with BEAD, we will be bringing service to large portions of Ripton next year, which is really exciting.
I'd love to make a bulletin board about that.
Depending on permitting, but in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to put a bulletin board up about that. It's an informational thing for the people in Ripton because we do have viewership in Ripton. So.
Great, yep. Great. Anything else on that topic? Well, we're running out of time here, so let's just move right on. Ellie, do you have any other updates on the construction? I think that would be helpful for everyone.
Well, there's just one other thing. So as you guys know, we authorized some line extensions a couple of months back, and so that's been dependent, as Steve just mentioned, on Green Mountain Power and the Make Ready. But Syracuse and Mission Broadband for construction oversight have been busy in, I think, starting in July and August, and there's about almost 4.5 miles of line extensions, mostly in Shoreham, Cornwall, some in Whiting, and a little bit in Virgins, that are going to be going live in the next, I would be shocked if it isn't up in the next week, actually, because the testing is done and Mission is looking at it now. And then there's other line extensions that were authorized and we're waiting on Make Ready, and those will come live in the fourth quarter. Good night, Mark. Thank you for coming. That's all that I have on the construction updates, but then I can move on to marketing if you want.
Let's move on, Ellie.
All right, good. And I realized actually putting out this agenda, we talked in the executive committee, and one of the things that we discussed there that we wanted to bring to the governing board, not so much for resolution, but more to start the discussion and see where we go, is talking about forming a community engagement committee at the governing board level. Because marketing is one aspect, but if we think about it, we have delegates from all of our member towns, and we should we are really kind of missing a trick in that we don't actually have a group that's sitting around thinking about how we can best take advantage of the fact that we are what we are, which is not only a nonprofit and not only a nonprofit that's been the lucky recipient of large amounts of grant funding, but also that we come from the community and we have deep ties into the community. And so part of the origin of this came in discussion with our marketing firm, because there's a lot of you guys may have been noticing we've been sponsoring events. We sponsored Virgin's Day, and we sponsored the Festival on the Green, and we're sponsoring a run in Orwell in a couple of weeks, and probably other things as well that are escaping my attention off the top of my head. As well as various promotions that we're running to try and raise awareness of the fact that we're here and to try and get people onto the network. And one of the things which I think is very true is that a lot of the advertising we've been doing in the past has been online advertising, but people don't necessarily, if you're online, you see it, but if you're not online, either because you don't have a good internet connection or you just don't hang out online, you're not necessarily going to be seeing our advertising. So we've been trying to do a better job of being offline as well. And one of the most powerful sources of advertising is referrals and face-to-face and neighbor-to-neighbor. And that's why it's been so great to have people posting on Front Porch Forum or posting on their local Facebook groups when they like what we're doing. So one of the things that we spoke about in executive committee is having our marketing firm work on drafting town-specific messaging that town reps can post into their Front Porch Forum, because we don't have to pay for that, to the degree that people are comfortable doing that, of course. And that also led to a discussion around, can we use governing board members, for example, to be manning events? Because there's only one of me, and I do have a lot of other things that are going on, and when there's grant deadlines and so on, if I have to choose between submitting a grant deadline or getting the audit in and going and tabling at a market, it's clear what I'm going to choose. But at the same time, it would be really good for me to be able to work with a marketing firm and have the right support and collateral and be able to have more people from the community, governing board members and other members, actually coming out there and manning those events. So we did have a volunteer training at the end of August. Mike Sheets came and another member of the community. So there's a bunch of threads, but one of the things that we did want to bring up as a topic is to explore if there's interest at governing board level at forming a community engagement committee, both to think about how we can use governing board members and volunteers to be effective marketers and boots on the ground, but also how to, what are the opportunities that we're not even thinking of about how we could work with our towns and other entities in the community better? I mean, like Drew, you mentioned CVOEO for the income verifications and spreading the word to people who might be interested in understanding that there's going to be preferences around drops for lower income households. And that's great, but I'm sure there's plenty of other organizations as well. But like I said, there's only one of me, and my focus is on, well, you guys know what my focus is on, and the executive committee is focused really on, supporting me to run the business. But there's a whole other avenue where if we had more resources, we could potentially be doing a lot more. So that was the conversation we want to tee up today. And like I said, I think it's more opening the door and seeing what level of interest there is. And then perhaps we put this on the agenda for next month to see if there's enough interest to actually get a committee together. Spada.
So I'm going to practice saying no. I'm not going to be on a marketing committee. However, I would be really interested in being able to receive town-specific information, because like the town of Ripton, we don't have a lot of events. So unlike Virgin's Day, but every, twice a month, we have our recycling barn that's open, and that's where a lot of the community members come through. And when we have town specific information to share, there's usually a small table there, and that's how information tends to get disseminated is through that interaction at the recycling center, right? And so if I knew what information to share, or how to hand it out, or to be able to connect people to the right places to find what they're looking for, that's something I would be willing to do, because I do man the recycling table at least once, if not twice a year. But when there's a specific event, then I can certainly just go, as a side person to set up a small table. And then now we also, and I'm not running it, but this is the third year that there's a music festival that's happening at Silver Towers, which is a camp for handicapped folks, both physical and mental challenges. And so, again, it's a very localized event, it tends to be very small, but it's a different way of disseminating information that could get out there. So that's what I'm able and willing to do as a delegate for my town, to help support that effort, even if I'm not going to serve on the committee directly.
Thanks, Zapata. Other thoughts, anyone? Drew?
Yes, I need to hop out because I have to record select board, but I will send an email to Ellie later about things that I think would that MCTV could probably help out with, because we have about 75% of the viewership, or we have 75% of Middlebury regularly watching MCTV, who are all in the CUD, and I think that could be like a fun partnership. So I got to go record that meeting now, but I'll email Ellie later about it, because I think that could be awesome.
Great, thanks, Drew. Anything else on marketing? Now we're almost done, and we've actually got spare time here. I don't have anything else to contribute, Ellie. Is there any other items of consequence you want to bring up? No?
Nope.
No? So this is the governing board's opportunity to ask any questions that have no bearing on anything we're talking about today. Do any of you have any questions about our operation, what we do, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong? We're open to, we work for you, right? So whatever you're thinking about, we want to hear about it. You don't need to do it in this audience, but you know how to reach me, and you know how to reach Ellie via email. So anytime, we welcome your thoughts. Okay, reminder that we are still in search of delegates for Panton and Whiting. Again, if your network finds yourself bumping into anybody who lives in one of those two towns that might be civically interested or complains about their bandwidth stinks, that's probably the kind of person that you might want to just tap on the shoulder and say, we could really use you as a governing board member. We are. This only works if we have enough members of the governing board to do the work that we're doing. So it really is very important. Okay.
Steve, just as a quick question, can town officials serve on the board in that capacity?
On the Maple Governing Board?
Yeah. Like
Yes, absolutely.
if there was a town clerk or a zoning administrator, or someone like that, is there considered a conflict of interest, or could they serve in that capacity, on the governing board in that capacity?
Yeah, there's some limitations on executive committee membership as it relates to we can't have two people from Ripon on the executive committee as an example.
I thought it was the governing board that you needed delegates.
And so
Yep.
having a delegate on the governing board, Ellie, there's no limitations. It could be a town clerk or something like, could it not?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's nothing in statute that even says that the delegate needs to be a resident of the town.
Oh, well, that's weird.
And further to that, the statute actually does require, because you need to have quorum is 50% of the member towns, not 50% of the delegates. and so, or greater than 50% of the member towns. And so because the Northeast Kingdom has a large number of members who were quite small, and so they've been tackling this by having delegates. Like one town will appoint someone who is a resident of another town just for the purposes of making sure that there's enough bodies who show up to make sure they always hit quorum. So just putting that out there. And Shannon's had his hand up for a while.
I was just going to point out that your legislative body just needs to appoint them, but they can be a town official. Absolutely.
Yep. They could live in some other country according to statute. There's nothing prohibiting that.
Okay, everyone, anything? It sounds like we're all good, and I guess we could probably all use an extra couple minutes for the rest of our evening. So when the next meeting is about a month from now, October 14, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We got a motion from Zapata. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you in about 30 days.